can your laptop do this? Because if it's not one of these ConceptD Ezels from Acer, then it probably can't. This folding, rotating display is definitely unique and pretty innovative, but for me personally, it falls just a little short of being something that I would actually want to use myself. Let's take a look at this whole thing, explain what it's about, explain why I think that, and plenty more. Of course, first, if you haven't already, consider subscribing for more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Acer's ConceptD line of laptops are ones that I've checked out before and are generally effectively gaming laptops with a few tweaks for creators. Things like having stunning color-accurate displays, lower power profiles, and better fan tuning and fan profiles as well, but often come with similar or the exact same hardware as their sort of gaming counterparts. What that means is that they strike a good balance between being visually good for creators, but also having enough power behind them to do pretty much any task you like, from video editing to 3D modeling to a bit of designing work as well. Now, the new Ezel lineup is basically any of their models with this new, very fancy and innovative sort of rolling hinge. They currently offer it with two of their models, the ConceptD 7, which is the one I have here, and the ConceptD 3, which is, I believe, still a 15.6-inch display, but is a thinner laptop with a little less weight behind it and a little less horsepower too. There is technically also the Pro variants, which offer Quadro graphics instead of the RTX, GTX graphics you find in the standard models and ECC memory, but the 7 non-Pro is the one I have here. Obviously, the main selling point of these Ezel models is the display. The actual panel itself is a Pantone validated 100% Adobe RGB covered IPS panel with a custom calibration pre-installed, which means delta E's of less than 2 out of the box. This is a stunning display to look at. The colors are vibrant, beautiful, and accurate, and means that if you want to do any level of creative work, from the illustration side to more photo video editing or 3D modeling, you're going to have a very good time with it. It's also a touchscreen with 4096 pressure sensitive levels using the included stylus that's hidden in this little cubby hole at the right side of the laptop. Otherwise, of course, there is the obvious one, which is the hinge. Now, this is a pretty unique design. It essentially rolls over the hinge and can be placed in pretty much any orientation you like. You have the obvious standard laptop clamshell look, but you can also tilt it up for a bit better drawing, or you can drop it down for a bit more ergonomic drawing, or even have it be touching the surface for a proper drawing experience. You can lay it flat like a tablet, or you can fold it over internally to show your work off to the other people in the boardroom. The thing is though, unlike Microsoft's Surface kickstands, the hinge on this isn't quite perfect. I feel like it could do with a little bit of revisioning, because while using it, it's incredibly stiff. It's pretty difficult to open the laptop at all, and if you want to move it around, it's quite difficult to do it one-handed. You generally have to do it two-handed, and it takes a bit of effort. And the thing is, that stiffness isn't really rewarded in a nice fixed experience, especially for drawing on. If you have this display in a sort of upright position, but without the bottom of the screen touching the keyboard plates, it wobbles like crazy. You really don't have to put much effort into, drawing on it for it to shake around, and often when you do, it ends up collapsing down onto the keyboard plates, which does give it a lot more stability on the low end, but if you're drawing up near the top, it will lift itself up or flatten the display down without too much pressure. The trouble is, if Acer just makes the hinge stiffer, like I said, it's already really difficult to even open the laptop or position the display, and so I'm not sure that's the solution. I think a more clever engineering solution like Microsoft's kickstands might be a better shout. And then there's the touch support. The included stylus feels a little on the cheap side. It's actually the very first comment my partner made when trying this out, and when you go to use it, it's not too bad. The 4096 levels of pressure sensitivity work pretty well, and especially if you're right-handed, it has a reasonable experience drawing. The palm detection or palm rejection is okay. Sometimes it's a bit finicky where it will only work if you've already started drawing before you put your palm down, and then if you take the pen off, it will stop drawing until you lift your palm, put the pen back down, and then put your palm back down. It's not perfect, but what makes it even worse is the serious amounts of prejudice it has against people like me who like to write with their left hand. See, when I was using the Lenovo Yoga 14, which also has a stylus built in and pressure sensitivity, it didn't really matter who was drawing on it, what orientation or what, anything. You could just stick your hand down and start drawing like normal. But on this, if you're using your right hand, like I said, it can be a bit touchy, a bit finicky sometimes, but generally it's okay. But if you try and use your left hand, it flat out does not work. If you're able to write without touching the display at all, of course it works just fine. But if, like most normal people, you like to draw or write with your hand resting on the paper, or in this case, on the display, if you're using your left hand to do that, it will not reject your palm at all. It will rotate the display or the canvas, it will zoom in, zoom out, it will pick different tools, it will do anything other than draw like you want it to. And that's a problem, because for me, when I started using this, I was incredibly frustrated at how ineffective the touchscreen was and how I had to very carefully draw without touching the screen at all, like the old school touchscreens which didn't have any level of palm rejection. But when my partner started using it, she had no problems at all because she's right-handed. I swapped back and yeah, once again, still didn't work. But moving on from that, one of the other selling points of this sort of machine is the sheer amount of horsepower that you have in here to help actually do all of the sort of creative tasks you would want to do. That was one of the main downsides of the Yoga 14. It's a really nice display, it's great for drawing on, but the horsepower it has to back that productivity up just wasn't really there. With this one, you have plenty. In my specific model, I have an i7-10875H, which is an 8-core 16-thread chip, and you have an RTX 2070 Max-Q for graphics, which is kind of insane. It can actually go up to the 2080 Max-Q for this model, or if you go with the Pro versions, all the way up to the RTX 5000 series in the Quadros. Also, in terms of RAM, this model has 16 gigs, so you can get up to 32 and even ECC memory if you go with the Pro models, and you have up to 2 terabytes of SSD storage as well. As you'd expect, that is plenty in terms of raw horsepower, and for creative workloads, it does really well. Let's take a look at some of those creative benchmarks. Starting off with Cinebench R20 and the single-threaded results, you can see that the 10875H does a pretty good job here. It holds up to the slightly faster 1080HK pretty well, and the new Intel Evo chips as well. There's also obviously the Ryzen 4800H, which it doesn't quite keep up with, both in single and multi-threaded, but overall it does a reasonable job. You can see in this application, despite it being the same core count and thread count than the 1080HK, it does have a fairly significant performance drop-off here, but that's kind of to be expected, especially with this more creator-focused machine. When it comes to rendering in Blender with the BMW scene, it did a good job here. It's not all that much slower than the 1080HK and is plenty fast enough for average use cases, and actually even rendering the gooseberry test, which is a lot harder and a lot longer, it actually kept up incredibly well to the 1080HK, which is kind of a surprise. When rendering in Premiere, this one is a bit more hit and miss, as depending on the different versions of media encoder that you use and all that sort of stuff, it can vary. So technically it does beat the 1080HK here, but either way, you can see it does a good enough job for things like video editing too. And while we're here and looking at some benchmark results, I'm sure that there is a small subset of designers or creative professionals who would want this sort of machine but would also want to game on the side, and also it's me, so let's take a look at some gaming benchmarks. And starting off with COD Modern Warfare, this was running at sort of high ultra settings, and we're getting 82 FPS average, which is well above the 60 Hz limit of the display, and so it's a pretty decent experience. Also, the 1% low is a hair over 60 FPS, meaning for a good playing experience too. As for Watch Dogs Legion, this is an incredibly difficult game to run, especially at ultra settings, so 45 FPS average actually isn't too bad. You would want to run it in more like high or medium, but still decent enough. And Fortnite on epic settings, again running at 92 FPS, means that you're going to have a very good playing experience and a very good 1% low of 69 FPS as well. So yeah, plenty fine, an enjoyable enough experience for most. You also get a lot in terms of connectivity. Namely 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, which can be used for connecting fast external storage or external graphics, or even just displays and hubs as well. And speaking of displays, you actually get a full-size DisplayPort connection on this, which is rare to see, but actually quite nice. You also get a full-size HDMI, you also get Ethernet, obviously DC in, a headphone jack, 2 USB Type-A ports, and a full-size SD card reader, which actually is a full-size, full-depth reader, which means you could leave an SD card locked in there while traveling without fear of it being broken in half. And actually, speaking of traveling with this thing in general, I don't really get it. I guess this ConceptD 7 model is probably the more type of device that you're going to leave on your desk most of the time, but occasionally you can unplug everything and take it to a meeting or take it with you somewhere else to, do your work on the go. But it's just so thick and so heavy that I can't really imagine me personally taking this very far. It's something that I guess I would rather have the ConceptD 3, which is the lighter, lower power, but more easily portable machine if I was going to be out and about more often. And then there's the price. The model I have here costs a whopping £3,000, and if you want the one with the Quadro 5000, that's £5,000. And that's a lot of money to spend on, for me, what feels like a first generation device. There's a few things like the hinge and the palm rejection that I feel could be improved in a sort of second generation of these that would make this something I would be a lot more happy to recommend. For me, this is a great concept, but the execution just isn't quite there yet. There is also a couple of other little niggles that I would like to see improved in a future generation or future version. Things like thermals, which, especially for this CPU, it hit 98 degrees Celsius and then thermal throttle through the floor. And even when the GPU was active, while the temperature there was fine at about 78 degrees Celsius, the fan profiles got a little on the loud side. It is better than most gaming laptops for sure, but it could be improved ever so slightly. Otherwise, in terms of build quality, that's also something that I felt let it down ever so slightly. Compared to the other ConceptD models without the Ezel hinge, those use a very nice brushed aluminium or steel, whereas this is, I can only describe as pretty cheap feeling plastic. I don't know whether it's the matte white finish or just the plastic itself, but it doesn't live up to that sort of price tag. Overall, I wouldn't buy one myself. And not just because I'm not really in the target market, but because there are some things that I see needing improved before I could happily recommend it. Things like the hinge and the palm rejection and maybe even the build quality too. Once those are improved, I see this as a really innovative concept that I could see working really well for a large subset of the sort of creative professional market. But until then, this is just a nice concept. D. But that's my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the ConceptD Ezel line and this ConceptD 7? Is this something you'd pick up yourself, or would you like to see those sorts of things improved first, or anything at all? Feel free to let me know in those comments down below. Now, if you do want to check out the ConceptD 7 Ezel, or maybe just check out the pricing, because that varies depending on when and where you watch this, feel free to check out the top link in the description down below. That is an Amazon affiliate link that will take you to your local Amazon store, where you can see all that good stuff. There is also plenty of other links in the description down below you can check out, from merch or hoodies or t-shirts like this one, or a load of other cool designs, or Patreon for access to our Money Men Discord chat and sponsor-free videos, and of course supporting me directly too, or a load of other things like overclock Shiki affiliate links, VPN options, a lot of stuff for you to check out. If you're interested in checking out the other ConceptD laptops that I've already reviewed, or maybe the Razer Blade Studio, I'll leave some of those videos on the end cards for you to check out, and that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, but otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video.